and then we can start. Sometimes it takes more time. No, I'm not sure why. Maybe it's the cache or something like that. All right, got it. Perfect. We are ready to start. Martin, do you want to be first?
Sure. So yesterday I was mainly working on creation of tickets. So I was focusing on the part related to epoch processing. I think we should be able to create tickets for that for external contributors. What I'm doing now is so first I created the boilerplate for the spec test, and I'm also want to make sure like that. The parts don't have a lot of dependencies, or if they have dependencies that they are explicit, so that we can also order them based on difficulty, and also create tickets for the potential dependencies. For example, ones might depend on Randao or shuffling or those type of things. So yeah, so today I'm gonna do a deeper dive on the dependencies. I had some work done related to that a few weeks ago. So I'm going to go back to that graph, but I guess it has to be a little bit more fine-grained. So yeah, I want to make sure that someone doesn't start to work on something and that has a huge dependency. So that's it for me. I also created a couple of tickets, one related to config, something that we were talking about here. It would be nice to extract the config related to mainnet or like the different chains to a config file and not having hard-coded all over the place, or having to pass a config object to every function. And I also created a ticket related to shuffling that we already have a candidate that wants to work on that. So yeah, that's it for me.
Awesome. That's all very useful. Thanks for that progress. Paul, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So I've been continuing to focus on finalizing the internal core functions, especially process execution payload. And I've taken the ticket created by Martin about creating the configuration files. So right now I'm building the configuration files because I basically need to use these constants and these configs to be able to run the internal functions. So right now I'm working on that. I hope to have a PR soon, and then finalize the internal function and PR that. And when both of these are merged, I can finalize the test runner, because basically the test runner uses the internal function that uses the config. So it's like I need to do all of them in order. And then on the test runner, I'm still looking into patch. It's not like super straightforward, or like at least super like well explained how to fully implement at least what I want to implement. But I'm still looking into it, and I'll try to do that ASAP. So yeah, and just the last question that I potentially had was just, can someone tell me what do they call minimal specs? Because I thought I knew, but now it's a little bit more blurry for me. So you have the mainnet specs and you have the minimal specs, but the minimal specs are not are not like the testnet specs. They are for what then?
So I think the way it works is you have like the base presets that can be mainnet on minimal, and then you have like each of the chain for example, Sepolia, which is based on mainnet, but it has some variables or constants that are a little bit different. But like most of the stuff is derived from mainnet.
Okay, so there's like two. Oh, Thomas, you wanted
Yeah. From what I've seen, minimal is just used for tests, mostly because the mainnet configuration uses a lot of space in the SSIT encodings because a lot of vectors are of a really big length, while minimal tries to keep it minimal, like the name says. So I've mostly seen it in tests, and I think it's because of that, just because of a size issue.
Okay, makes sense. So to confirm, the minimal and the mainnet are like two specs, which are like the basis. And indeed, the mostly like we see mainnet like when you're running a chain, and we see like minimal when you're running like spec tests or things like that. And then on top of that, you have like additional configs for each like blockchains that's gonna run. So for example, you're gonna have Sepolia that's gonna have one, mainnet that's gonna have one. You're gonna have like Holiski that has gonna have another config that are built on top of these first configs, right?
Yeah, they are more like configs instead of specs, both mainnet and minimal.
I think
Just to
that
clarify.
I think that the ideal for us would be to have like a selector. This is something that we talked with Thomas yesterday and which as well. And a selector would be something that you, I mean, there are two parts from this. This is on the one hand, you have the final GLI, like the CLI implementation, which is like the way users are supposed to use it. For instance, you would say a config Sepolia, config Query, config mainnet, and then that would automatically choose whatever config you need. And if you run test, there's also like an automatic configuration of which is the one that you choose. But inside, we probably need a way to not, which I think this is all described in the issue, but just to make sure, we need a way to automatically get the configuration on a simple way from any function. And this is typically done with the config files, which are config.exs, and there's also test, and there's also runtime. And we will probably make some use of runtime, because runtime uses lets you use environment variables, options that you pass to a program that is already compiled, and that kind of stuff. So, but the most important part is that on the one hand, we shouldn't be passing configs around, because that's like it adds a lot of boilerplate to all of the calls. But also, we shouldn't need to worry about if we are in minimal, or if we are in mainnet, or if we are in Sepolia or in early anywhere in the code. Like, we should already have that configured somewhere when you start the app, and then you shouldn't ever worry about that again when coding anything else that's not the config. That's the goal, at least. Like, you should, for instance, if you need a preset or something like that depends on the config, like for instance the length of an array, then you just ideally you would just need to say application get config array length or something like that, and you shouldn't worry, and that query should give you whatever length you have according to the configuration that you have selected. This is a little bit of a detailed discussion, but yeah, I don't know if that was clear.
I agree with the general approach. There's only one thing that right now, because of the way that we are implementing SSE, we actually are passing in the NIF. We are passing either mainnet or minimal, and we have the values hard coded in the Rust side. I wouldn't tackle that on this first iteration. So, like, Paul, I would look at what Lighthouse does. I think you will get a better sense of the difference between Sepolia and minimal and mainnet, if it was not clear enough after what we just said.
Yeah, no, I understood. Thank you. But it was also because, for example, right now, in the documents that you linked, that are built by Lighthouse, you have different configurations. So you have like let's say mainnet, Sepolia, Oleski. These three are based on mainnet, and then they add like their specific configs related to each of their chains. But minimal is something else. Like minimal is another like base config. But for example, Lighthouse doesn't like declare the minimal config. So I think we need to take it from somewhere else, like the minimal. But I know that there's like in the consensus specs you can find the minimal constants too. So is it that you recommend for me to go and take the minimal constants from the consensus specs and then take these constants from Lighthouse, or what is the vision for that? Because Lighthouse is not declaring minimal specs, at least in the folders that you sent.
Yeah, well, as Mega says, the only minimal stuff we are using is for the tests, for the. I don't know if there's another use case for it. So it seems like in real life, it will all be mainnet configs. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if we will use minimal values outside of the SSC stuff.
Yeah, it's only for the spec test. So yeah, I'll still go to finalize it. Or to say a last thing, I will go and find these minimal specs to be able to run the tests. Because people will try to run tests and stuff like that. So I will go and fetch these minimal specs, implement them in the repo, and so as Thomas said, we just pass like config, and then when people run tests, it passes like minimal to config, and so it's always the minimal config. And then when someone runs like in normal mode, like Sepolia or mainnet, we'll pass like the mainnet config improved with like the specific like Sepolia or specific mainnet mainnet specific like configs. So I think I'll do it like that. And
Awesome. If you're looking for the minimal values, they are in the presets. In Lighthouse, they're in types, presets, minimal. I'll send you the link to the repo, or to the public repo, but they are there if you need them, or if they are useful for reference. They are in the presets and not in the like configs. But I'll send you a link so this doesn't only exist in this conversation, if that's helpful. But okay, I think that you have this in your hands, right? Yeah, I think you're just need to figure out that part. If you need to, if we need to have a sync afterwards, then we can do so. Let us know if you need any help with that. And Thomas, do you want to go next?
Yes. Well, today I did another round looking at the open PRs, left some comments, and after that continued work on the integrating the checkpoint sync with the block requesting. It's almost finished. Just now I think I managed to make it work. Was looking at the logs, and it's in. We are now able to ask a trusted source for a beacon state, and then use the slot listed in that state to start syncing from that slot onwards, getting blocks from that slot and the next ones from our peers. Okay. Now I'll just check that it's working correctly. It seems like it does, but I need to double check. And if I don't misremember, I think with that we already completed this milestone, right?
I think so. I think that this milestone what's this missing is mostly two things. It's syncing up to the last state, which I think that you're almost about to finish, and then there's there's the payload validation. If we have both of those, we finish the milestone and we are good to go for attestations. But that's great progress. I'm glad that we are not only syncing the beacon state, but also getting the blocks afterwards. That's very nice. Yeah, I don't think I need to ask any questions about that. That's very clear. Do you have any more updates?
I think we'll need to talk about the payload validation. But yeah, after that, I'll see what I'll work on. And that's all for my update.
Perfect. Yeah, Paul is working on payload validation, so we can talk all of us if we need to. But Paul, I think that Paul is okay with this. But if he needs our help or whatever, we can sync on that. As for what you should do next, well, let's think about that after the meeting. There's a plethora of things that you can take. Yeah, well, I think that one of... Sorry, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, one thing that that we could do is just put in common, because I believe that Thomas finished mostly like one side, which was like adding the blocks after the beacon state that we receive, and then I did the other side, receiving the RPC URL and like receiving the beacon state. But now we need to put it together, I think.
I already like worked on that. It's part of the PR that like I needed to I needed the beacon state to start thinking from there.
Okay.
So as part of what I worked on, I added the integration.
Okay,
Because
let's check that.
Paul's PR is already merged, right? The one for the beacon state RPC.
Yeah, it's already main.
Okay.
Nice.
Great, because I PR'd it yesterday, so I didn't know if you merged it. So if you were able to connect both of them, then it's all right. Okay, we can just move forward then. Great.
That's awesome. Great teamwork, guys. I think that... Oh, yeah, and you were asking about what you could do next. I think that one of the priorities would probably be moving to ports. Like, we need to start that at some point, and I think that this may be a good point in time to do that, because we are like finishing one of the milestones, starting the next one, but also we have most of what we need for P2P ready. But if this would be normally the stage at which we would start with many refactors, and if we're going to do this big refactor, we probably shouldn't do the small ones first. So I think that's possibly one of the things that we want to tackle.
I agree.
Awesome. As for me, I think that I'm the only one missing the updates. Today I've been mostly catching up with the EPF reports because I was missing many bi-weekly updates. No, I don't recommend that to anybody. So I basically spent some hours this morning writing them, like the missing ones. I'm trying to write for all of the missing weeks, and then I'm about to finish that. As soon as I finish that, I will move back to documentation, which was something that I was doing before. Trying to get like a quick start for anyone that needs some reference on the ed specs, which are very dense and hard to read. And that's it. Like at least I want to have some like 4 or 5 basic diagrams on what happens when a block arrives, what happens when an attestation arrives, etc. Like having some idea of how that works. Yeah, I think that's it for today. Does anyone have any final comments or questions? That's awesome. Thank you, everybody. Thank you all for joining, and see you all tomorrow.